Welcome to Behind the Play, a video and podcast product of The Hoop Show that explores the lives of players past and present and the off-field figures that are keeping us Geelong strong. My name is Paul James, and today I'm joined by an awesome guest, Nick Wade. How are you?
Yeah, very good, Paul. Thanks for having me on.
No, not a problem at all. Thanks for giving us your time. Even as we speak, and we were talking about it just before the show, you clocked off, 15 minutes ago, and you've jumped straight onto the call to have a chat. So I really appreciate the time you're giving today.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure. It's always good to talk footy and talk about the Cats. So, it should be a bit of fun.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be. So, I guess before we dive into some of your work in actually actively involved in the game, where did footy first come into your life? Was it really early? Was it kind of that idea, almost born with a footy in your hand, or did it take a little while to discover the game? What was it like for you growing up?
Yeah, well, I've born and raised in Geelong, so it's pretty hard to escape footy down here. And look, I went to my first game in I think it was prep. It was Geelong and West Coast, so we're talking sort of '94, which was when the famous sort of Geelong West Coast rivalry was really at its biggest. And yeah, I went to my first game there in '94, and I guess got addicted ever since, and really have watched pretty much every game. So that's where it started for me. And I guess once you're involved, my father was a Cats supporter, and then you just take it from there. And my mum and sister are still very, very passionate about the Cats and go every week, and it's runs through the family.
Oh, very nice. And I guess that suggests you and I are kind of a similar vintage then. Yeah, I mean, I would have been 4 or 5 at that same point as well. So I guess we've probably seen the same bumps and ridden the same waves as Geelong supporters throughout the journey. So we can probably bond
absolutely
more than most over that, just given the proximity in birth.
Exactly. Well, that's right. We caught the tail end of that great 90s or late 80s, 90s team, and then endured the almost the bottoming out, not quite the bottoming out, but and then have ridden that sort of wave through the mid 2000s to now. Really, we've been lucky, haven't we, that we've been able to watch the Cats for 20 years at that really high level.
It's been a good ride in recent years, and I guess not a bad thing for the both of us to I was born in '89, and obviously we lost to Hawthorn in that famous grand final that day, but I was glad I didn't have to necessarily live through that stress. I get to grow up and reflect upon it, and rewatch them when you're a little bit older, but to not have to live through that live, not knowing what was going on, I don't mind that.
Yeah, exactly. I know. I can't imagine what it would have been like. You think, particularly supporters who you think of Geelong's history, it was pretty lean years through the 70s and 80s, and then to make those 4 grand finals and then to keep losing them with those teams. I just think, you talk to people who are a bit more senior than us, and you can understand why they thought they'd never see success. So that's why '07 meant so much for so many people. But they were such a good team in the '90s, but kept getting knocked over by the better team. And I don't know about you, but I look back at those years and think that '93 was a missed opportunity for them.
Yeah.
And you look about how well they finished the year, and they were steamrolling everyone. And even '91, there's so many missed opportunities. We could talk for hours about it, but it's you can see why supporters were so disenchanted, I guess, by the end of the '90s about when's it ever going to turn for us.
Yeah, and I don't blame him in the slightest. And you're right, actually. Obviously, everyone talks about the 4 grand final losses through that period, but there are so many other opportunities where prelim here or knocked out a little bit early here, and we were arguably just as good, maybe even better, but the roll of the dice didn't work out our way or whatever that particular day, and all of a sudden you're out before you even had a chance to have a say on the final day. So
yeah, that's right.
And obviously we've seen that more recently as well. I guess as much as we don't like to talk about it, we think about Hawthorn in 2013 in the prelim there, and one errant kick could have changed the game. All of that sort of stuff. All this stuff's on a knife edge all the time, and you can be the best team and not win. We obviously saw that again in 2008.
Yeah,
bloody Hawthorn again.
I know, and that's what makes footy so, I guess, compelling and so addictive, because you think you're the best team in it. You're right, 2013. Even there's a feeling about 2016. Had they not had that bad quarter against Sydney, and would have they beaten the Bulldogs in the grand final, and all these thoughts. There's so many if, buts, and maybes, but that's footy, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, and I guess we can still be appreciative. We've still got 07, 9, and 11 still fairly fresh in our memories, so we've always got that to fall back on. But
totally.
Let's hope we can pull ourselves over the line again sometime soon. Going back to kind of those early days, though, so obviously you were immersing yourself in footy early on. Did you spend a bit of time playing yourself at an early age?
Yeah, I played at Bell Park in the Geelong Footy League. So that's Jimmy Bartell's club. He was, what would have he been, 4 or 5?
Yeah, a couple of years ahead.
Yeah, years older. But I do remember there was actually this aura about him when I was sort of, say, under 11, so we're talking 10 and he's 15 or 16. He would be on the track and kids would say, oh, he's good enough to be playing AFL, he's just too young. And then in hindsight you go, well, clearly he was, but there was this aura about him. There still is. I'm still connected with the club now, but I wasn't much of a footballer. I played for 7 or 8 years as a junior up to about under 18s, and then
fell off.
My pursuits in footy were on the other side of the fence. They're writing about it, watching it, and not playing it. So that's about where my football talents ended. But Bell Park's the local club that I sort of have a strong link with.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, and obviously great history at the club. And again, you reference a very obvious example for a lot of people in Jimmy, but they've produced plenty of great players over the journey as well, and obviously a big part of just that broader Geelong community that helps raise the quality of what we're actually seeing coming out of the Geelong Falcons and the community abroad. So
well, that's
really
right.
Important regardless.
Well, Kenny Hinckley coached them to a flag in 2003, and that almost launched his coaching career. There's that famous speech that you see when he's revving up the players at 3/4 time in that drawn grand final, and then that gets used all the time to sort of show his motivational qualities, and they still use it. It's a very strong for developing for players, and like see James Warple at Hawthorn's come through there in recent times, and Reece Matheson at Brisbane. So it's a really small but really proud club, and like Bartel, like he's still holding very high regard there, and
of course
does pop his head back in when he can, but he's pretty busy now. So, but he does.
He's got a bit on his plate.
Yeah.
So when did you? So obviously you mentioned like the act of playing the game wasn't necessarily your strongest suit, but when did you identify that? Again, as you put it, kind of the other side of the fence, but actually kind of writing about it or being able to kind of, I guess, commentate and have a say on the game. When did you realise that was maybe more your forte, or even a viable pathway?
Yeah, I think probably like late primary school or early high school. I remember like English things we had to do. You just had to write like creative essays or do sort of story writing or whatever it was, and I would end up writing about footy match reports from the weekend, write about how Geelong went or how Geelong was going to go, or write about a player, and that's how I would just write about footy, and obviously had a very strong passion for the game, and it was sort of a natural thing. I devoured newspapers when I was younger. I know that the modern world's a bit different now. We've got the internet and iPhone and all that, but it was nothing more I loved than if Geelong won, on a Saturday or a Saturday night, you pick up the Sunday paper and you read the stories and look at the stats and look at the ladder and read the previews, and things just intersected from there, and that's how I sort of got set on wanting to be a footy writer, and that's sort of where we are today, really.
Yeah, I mean, I guess similar sort of approach for myself at the end of the day. Like I used to devour the papers in the exact same sort of capacity. You would pick through the stats and there'd be that little bit extra if you were involved in the meta with the super coaches or fantasies or whatever the case happened to be, and obviously keep a close eye on that final column. But I mean, much the same as you. Like I had a little bit of a crack at some writing, and obviously never quite made the cut in that space. But there's a lot of writing I do these days on in various forums online, and the idea of being able to speak about the game in that sort of capacity was always enticing to me along the way. And I mean, I'm thrilled in your case that you've been able to make a pretty good fist of it. As we start to wade into that sort of territory shortly, you're doing some awesome stuff.
Yeah, it's a really good point you make. Like when I was like sort of teenager, I would read the forums. There's Big Footy. There's the Cat's Claw, which is a long-standing sort of message board, and I would you just write about it, and you get ideas, and then you look up to things that people had written, and that's the thing. Everyone can write about footy, and that's the great thing. It's I just really wanted to be a sports journal. I really did, and I would just my first break was with the Geelong Footy Club, actually. The magazine called We Are Geelong, which was their members mag in 2004. It was, and I went on an interstate trip to Sydney, and I just did like a interstate diary basically, and from there I got to interview like players, and I was like, wow, how good's this? And then suddenly you build your folio of work, and then you can go to the next employer and say, this is what I've done, and snowballs from there. So I'm always very grateful for the Cats who responded to a long email pleading for an opportunity when I was about 14 years old. So Sarah Albin is her name. She still works there. She works in the community department. She was head of media at the time, and so I owe a lot to her.
So Sarah, if you're listening, thank you for giving Nick a chance, and things have gone pretty well for you since. And I guess as we focus on that idea and like how it actually happened, I mean, that, I guess, for anyone watching and listening, regardless of whether it's footy or something else you want to get involved in, it's that sort of tenacity and that desire and kind of constant pushing, and sometimes even just knocking the door down on, this is what I want, and here's why, and presenting yourself in the best possible light, and you're representing that effort. It makes such a difference to anyone who's aspiring to any sort of a role. And I'm thrilled that, like in your case, that's the approach you took, and it's paid off, and things are going so well for you now. And for the club itself to give you the first opportunity, I mean, that's almost landed the dream gig straight out the gate, right? As a Cats fan.
That's right. And and when the club gives you the opportunity, then they've obviously got access to, like I said, players and coaches, and then and the players are happy to talk to you because the club says, oh, you can speak to Nick because he's writing for us, and you can build some trust. And you think that's the first building block of trust. You need a lot of trust in the writing journalism game. Sure. And then that's the first building block, and away you go from there. So, I look back really fondly on that. And on that period, I was able to do that during high school, and probably gave me a good head start heading into into uni, and then into, I guess, full-time work.
And so obviously, you just mentioned uni itself. So you did have this opportunity while you were still a student, but I guess what's highlighted there, just even as that quick summary of how things played out, is you didn't rest on your laurels. You've gone and done the further education to make sure that you're as equipped as possible. You obviously, I think at that point, had eyes on something beyond just the club itself, and a more AFL holistic sort of approach.
Yeah, like for me, like growing up in Geelong, like Geelong Advertiser was just like, it was the Bible of footy. Like it was just every day. And so through the high school days, I'd be reading it, and I got to uni, and all I wanted to do was write footy for the Geelong Advertiser. That's all I wanted to do. And I was really lucky in my first year of uni that they were looking for people to write local footy. So the Geelong Footy League, Ballerine Footy League, and they'd seen some stuff I'd written for the club, sort of, because by that time I'd branched out to write VFL stuff for the website, VFL match reports, and they gave me an opportunity. And then you've got your foot in the door at the Geelong Advertiser, and it was just like the best thing ever. At that time, I was stoked, and again, I just put so much energy into making sure I was doing the right things there and getting advice. And again, as you say, you can't really rest on your laurels. It's like you've got to keep challenging yourself and keep thinking, I've got to make the most of it. And I tried to go above and beyond it, and then did balance that with uni and all sorts of things. So while I was at uni, I was writing VFL footy, I was writing local footy, I was doing all sorts of things. So it was a fun time.
No, that's awesome. And constantly building those credits up, I guess, is really important. And obviously the networking opportunities that stem from that, and it unlocks more doors for people, and it kind of, I guess, snowballs in a lot of cases. And I'm sure when you're in that role and you're seeing this snowball that, I guess, is you and your career prospects starting to really gain some momentum, it must be very exciting at the time. And I mean, obviously the opportunity straight out the gate with the club, and the fact that you're able to talk to players in that sense is fantastic. But when you're getting that, and I guess the Advertiser's obviously got a strong tie to the town and the club itself, but you are kind of coming at the club as a bit more of an outsider. There's less of the nature of what you can and can't ask, and there's less prepared content going into the whole thing. To have that trust already, it all helps.
Yeah, where I was really lucky was that through all these opportunities, like I got a role at the club as a VFL trainer as well through that. So I was able to be a trainer on match day and at training. So you're working with the players all the time, and then I'll be writing the stories for their website, and then pretty soon I had to give that away to pursue my career as a full-time profession. But while I was finding my feet, I was immersed in a footy life, and I got to see how a football club operated, get to build relationships with the players. So I think that when I sort of stepped out to become a journalist, I had the grounding of a footy experience, and was able to sort of talk the talk a bit with the players, had a bit of respect with them, and then there's still some of the players there today that were there when I was at the clubs. Like we're talking, I was leaving just when Hawkins and Selwood were playing.
Yeah, I've got 2007 to 2020 there for the Addies. So
yeah. So that was a great time, and by sort of 2009, I was full time at the Geelong Advertiser. So that was and I was only 20 years old. So it was a really good period.
And a good period to be kind of covering the club as well, considering all the success that was to come. What was that like to be, again, I guess you're writing about it, but the amount of access you would get to players, to staff, to other off-field figures and the like would be fantastic. And I guess sharing, I mean, again, obviously you're a Cats fan too, so there might be a bit of bias that was coming into the whole thing, not necessarily reflected in your writing, but in terms of soaking in the moment and those sorts of things. It must have been a really exciting time to be a part of that.
It was. I mean, that's the thing with working for the Addy. Like the Addy's core business is being parochial to Geelong. So whether you can say how great are they when they're winning, and you can go why are they losing, and you can be angry. You try and you're writing for the fan. Like how does the fan feel? So like you're allowed to have that license when you're working at the Addy. And like you mentioned, like those early years, 2009 and 11 in particular, when I was working full time as a reporter, like. You pinch yourself like that. You have access. You're straight in the rooms after the game. Like you are literally rubbing shoulders because it is packed in there. Like, but
especially grand final day.
Yeah, like you're rubbing shoulders with the players. You know, you're getting interviews. You know, you're seeing the cup. You're seeing everything, and it's like, I can't believe this is happening. But then you get out of that, and the mad rush to put the paper together. So you've got your dictaphone's got 4 or 5 interviews. I remember interviewing Pod Adley after 2011, and he's got his arm in a sling because he's put it out backwards, and he's talking to the doctor, and they're laughing about how serious the injury is, but you're a premiership player, and it's like these moments are just like crazy. And then you talk to these players, and they're so happy to chat, and then you go, right, I've got 2 hours to write 5 stories and get them back to the paper, and where that's the nature of footy and the deadline rush. Like, you know, the paper's got to come out the next day full of stuff, but that means that you as the writer, you've got to write as fast as you can and dictate and get all the facts right. And you know, you've got people ringing you from the office. Where's the story? So it's chaos, but they are some of the best experiences to sit in a press box at the footy and go, wow, how good's this?
Was it a bit harder to get yourself in the right headspace to write again after all that though? Like you say, I'll get back, I've got 2 hours, I've got all these stories I've got to write, but there's this thing buzzing around. It's that Cats fan brain in the background that's got, like, how good is this? And you're still trying to write. You're thinking about the moments. You're like, hang on, no, I need to stop this. I need to cover X, Y, Z because they're the things that I'm here to cover right now.
Well, yeah, it's a great point.
Is that a challenge?
It's a great point that you make, because very early in the experience or as being a journalist, there's like the rule, no barracking in the press box. So you actually sort of conditioned to sit there, you just and almost watch the game and internalize. So you've got to narrow your focus onto watching rather than supporting. And I was
the
able
objective side.
Yeah, and I was able to flip that switch quite quickly. So you do sort of go into sort of work mode, and you just focused on typing. Both those times I was typing in the back of a car that was being ferried back to Geelong. So there's just chaos everywhere. But you are in those situations, though, because it's all very positive and it's all like, how good's this and that. Like you can sort of let yourself go a bit. But yeah, like it's something that I'm glad I was able to do quite early. Just sort of shut off to what is the issue. I remember the 2010 final when Mooney fell into the back of, I can't remember the player, but Lynn kicked the goal and Mooney turned around and said, you just cost us the game. So we're so close. Like in that game, Geelong wins. So your story is completely different to Geelong losing. So, and you've got to write that in 10 minutes. So you just got to put the head down and go. Like, there's no time for being a fan in that situation.
That's fair enough. I guess. I guess I think that I feel like there might be a difference when there's a premiership versus, I don't like, not that any finals are just any other game, but I guess the stakes are still different again. And again, I mean, I suppose you'd already had the experience of 2007, so maybe it was a bit easier because you'd already had the opportunity. I had really properly soak in what it's like to be a fan of a premiership team.
Yeah.
So the second time around, maybe it's a bit easier, and you can. Oh shit! I've got a job to do. Let's go.
Yeah.
But
it's a
great
bit harder. Yeah, as a supporter, I've probably never been able to truly experience the joy of a premiership in that regard because, like, it's been business. Like, so it's the trade-off. It's like, okay, so you're in the rooms, you're interviewing the players, you're writing about it, you've got privileged access. Some fans can't even get into the ground, but I'm paid to be there. Like, so there's that. But then, you know, at 10 o'clock at night, 4 or 5 hours after the game, and, you know, you're seeing photos of Mirabel Street, just, you know, people everywhere, and and like everyone's up and about, and the lines to every sort of nightclub or restaurant or whatever, they're out the door, and then you're sort of sitting miles away from it. You kind of think, oh gee, I'm missing out a bit here, and then like there are times to catch up, but you do miss that slight fan moment. But like that's just the job, and that's the nature of what we do.
Yeah, and I guess you did hit the nail on the head there. Like, it's a very privileged position that you've got, being able to just get in the game, and you've got yourself a guaranteed seat, for want of a better phrase. And yes, you're there in a working capacity, but you do get to watch a game of football, the biggest game of any given year, and it just so happens that the team you support is there and wins it in several of these occasions.
Yeah, that's right.
There's certainly pros to that, despite the con, I guess, and it's not even a major one, but of being able to, okay, I've got to switch off from this now, I'll cut the celebrations short and get to work, and then I'll try and get myself back into it later. Maybe should we find ourselves in a grand final next time? You might just need to take some personal leave around grand final week so you can soak it up and enjoy it, the full fan experience, I guess, for want of a better phrase.
Yeah, no, that's right. I might be jumping ahead here, but so we talk about the privileged nature. I got to go to Gold Coast / Brisbane / Queensland in 2020.
Yep.
I was up there for 2 months. So
did the isolation and
so we went up in the early September. So the grand final was the end of October. So it went up first September. Did the 2 weeks quarantining, and then I had 6 weeks on the ground in Queensland. So 3, but I was working by this time I'm at the Herald Sun, but did 3 weeks in the Sunshine Coast, so looking at Collingwood, Essendon, Melbourne, and someone else was up there for St Kilda. So I was there for 3 weeks, and then moved into Brisbane for the last 3 weeks. As it turned out, Geelong made that grand final. So you talk about being a privileged position. I was able to beat the Gabba for all those finals that they won.
The most Cats fans couldn't attend.
That's right. Unless you were lucky enough to live in Queensland, because the borders were essentially, I think. Yeah, they were pretty much closed to everyone. I don't think anyone could get in. Maybe if you're from Perth or from Adelaide, perhaps. But Cats fans couldn't get there. And that, you talk about pinching yourself moment, when everyone in Victoria is locked down and locked into their houses watching that grand final, and I'm walking into a ground with 30,000 people. It's just like this is it's
a different level of privilege.
This is just unbelievable. Like, and so. That moment sort of, and the first ever night grand final, all those things, you go, wow, this job does give you some absolute entitlements and some privileges that you just can't take for granted.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess, you just touched on the fact that was obviously with the Herald Sun there. How did, so you're, as you mentioned, we did the work at the club, and that was 2004 to 2008. We've got the Addy from 2007 to 2020. How did that, I guess for you, was it a decision that you I need to change the pace, or there's an opportunity here that I want to have a crack at? Like, how did that transition to the Sun actually begin or occur?
Yeah, I sort of never really thought I'd be leaving Geelong. Like, I thought I'd be happy there, and probably still would be. But there was an opportunity in Melbourne, and I took it and thought I'll give it a go and see how we go. And then that was sort of right around COVID, the start of COVID, and went up as sort of So I'd been the sports editor at the Addy for 3.5 years, from late 2016 to 2020, and so I'd sort of progressed out of writing. But when you're the sports editor, you don't write as well. You don't write at all at a metro paper. I was doing a fair bit of writing at Geelong, but I'd pretty much stopped writing about footy, and you're just overseeing it. You're driving it. You all those sorts of things.
A bit more managerial.
More managerial, yeah. And then so there was a managerial sort of deputy sports editor role at the Herald Sun, and I took that on, and then not long after I become the sports editor, and it's been I've really enjoyed it. It's been I'm glad I took it on. Yeah.
No, I mean,
out of the cat's bubble.
Don't blame me whatsoever. It certainly, I'd imagine, brings a bit of extra or added perspective as well. You've got this skill set. You're exposed to obviously a new group of people that are at that point they're covering something. I mean, obviously you are still touching on other clubs and those sort of things, but it's a broader pool. There's like people are more spread across, and you're catching different sorts of news and getting access to different people, bringing different perspectives. So I'm sure there was some awesome new challenges that came from that as well.
Yeah, no, there are, and it's like you're talking. It's all clubs. It's all sports. It's everything. It's it's the biggest sort of paper in Australia, really, and it's it absolutely loves sport, and it's such a great environment. The journalists are so passionate. Like, you just go in there and you go to work and you just talk sport, and it's some of the great stories come out of the great internal office debates about issues and whatnot. It's
the things that'll never make the paper, never actually go to air or any of those sort of things, but they're probably some of the heaviest conversations of the lot, right?
Yeah, well, it's like we're so lucky. Our job is to talk sport and write about sport and watch it and put it all together. And I mean, every job's hard and has its moments, but at the end of the day, when you strip it all back, it's we do what a lot of people do for recreation. Like that is our job. And I guess the one good thing about being at the Herald Sun is that, because the Geelong Footy Club is so comparatively to the Addy, it's such a small part of what I do compared to what I did at Geelong. Yep. I can now, in my downtime, my private time, actually sort of go back to sort of being a supporter again. You can.
Oh, that's awesome.
You can. You're not focused so much on everything to do with the Cats from haven't got your work hat on about the Cats all the time. You've got you can go to a footy game and relax, maybe
enjoy it as a fan again, as
a spectator. Sometimes you get ideas and you tell reporters things, but really, it's not your narrow focus anymore. It's that is a really good thing.
And I guess what sort of you've touched on a few, I guess, key differences there, but is there anything else that you've really found in your time now with the Sun versus the Addy that has really, I guess, been important to your development as a writer?
Well, I just think that with the Herald Sun, it's just so broad in everything, in comparison to the Addy, and it's such a big paper, and I think it's where you talk to a lot of young journos, and that's where they aspire to be. They want to be on the back page of the Herald Sun. It's the footy paper. It sets the agenda. It's all those things, and I feel very, very lucky that my career progression has landed there. So I'm really enjoying it.
And obviously, we touched on earlier that when you were first kind of even deciding to have a crack at getting into this journalism space, at the time, the 99% of all the content was written for the paper, and online wasn't really a factor in things at that stage. Now that's very much not the case. There's both the significant parts of what is going on at the Herald Sun, and specifically the sports section there. So what does that look like for you? How when that started to become an increased focus across the Addy, but then obviously with the Sun as well, how did you kind of, I guess, reassess the way you went about your work, and how the importance of some things versus others? Does your writing change because of the nature of the platform? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. There are just as many people involved in newspapers to get stories out online as there are now to get the physical hard copy paper out.
Yeah,
and that's because when news breaks, you've got to get it up quickly so people can read it. And yeah, like often they're different. You might write a breaking news story that's for online, and then you build it throughout the day, and then at the end of the day, there's a finished product for the print. It really has changed the dynamic, of news. I mean, you only have to look at your phone. You've got Twitter, Facebook, and you see all the headlines. Yeah, and that's where a lot of people get their sort of their instant news, their headline news, and then it's up to us up to newspapers now to get people to get invested in what they're reading online. And there are heaps of people that still read the printed product in the digital form. Like you can actually flip the pages through the website. That's very, very popular, and so is the hard copy. Like it's still a very, very popular product. But yeah, it just means that, I mean, journalists of 20 or 30 years ago might have been able to sort of work on stuff throughout the day, and at 6:30 file their story. But now you've got to have reporters who are available and ready and on top of things all the time,
because anything can happen at any time.
Exactly, yeah. And they have to file quicker, and they have to it's a moving feast all day. Like, and that's why a lot of us get addicted to the news cycle, because no day is the same. Like you wake up and things are happening, and and then you're going one way, and then you're changing to go to another direction because something's breaking. And it's addictive. Like every day is different. So.
And that phone plays a massive part in it. If you're on the consumer side of it, I mean, that like it's easy to see as you describe it there in this one context of sport, whether it's one specific sport or sport more broadly. Like it's so easy to see how people get stuck in that loop of scrolling all day, because you're right, anything can happen at any moment, and there's kind of a societal expectation that when it does, someone, regardless of whether they have a preferred media outlet or whomever, like, there's going to be something said right away. And I guess the thing that struck me there as you were describing what it's like when there is some breaking news, and I'm sure there's a far more abbreviated version of that at first, but then that piece develops throughout the course of the day, and you've got something whole hopefully at the end of it.
Yeah.
In terms of that print-based version, the one that actually goes to the paper, like, does it get to that point sometimes, any of the time, where that version that is slowly built over the course of the day, does that finalized piece then end up being, for want of a better phrase, copy pasted into the actual print version afterwards, or is there still a little bit of tweaking that goes on after that to kind of adjust for the format?
Yeah, well, I'll say, like, every story is like different, but there'll be some things when it's breaking news, it'll start small because you only know a little bit of information, so you get that out, and then you make more calls, and more information comes to hand, and that story online will progressively snowball. You probably see more to come, and it progressively snowballs, and then you're just adding to it, or we call it retopping it if better information comes. But then by the end of the day, it goes, okay, so let's pull this together and make sense for the paper. And often, or hopefully by the end of the day, that story that's online is pretty much right. But you might do a bit of a rewrite, and then that story goes online again. But everything's different. Like sometimes a reporter will be working on a story that is ready to go straight away, and that's the final story. What
a luxury, right?
Sorry, it's poetry.
What a luxury.
It is, and they've worked on that story themselves, and they break that story, and that's the story. So you don't need to do any more to it. That's the story.
Which I guess in that sense is a bit more traditional in a lot of ways too.
It is, yeah. But things like if there's player injuries, or if a coach gets sacked, or if there's any sort of any story that you just know is going to evolve, like then it's just a bit of a rolling sort of update as you go. And the paper and online are different. Like online, you get videos, you can click around to other stories that are related. You can run more pictures, all those sorts of things. So that you got to build stories for an online market, and for paper and print, you go ahead. We've kind of maybe only used one picture here, or you're stuck by the confines of a page, whereas online you can write as much as you want. So there's lots of nuance in how you actually pull together a paper.
Yeah, that complementing content that can come up around it. Again, as you mentioned, whether it's video, linking articles, those sorts of things. It's not something that's there in that traditional format. Or if there's creative ways you can get around that, but you've only got so much real estate, I guess, at the end of the day, too.
That's right. Yep. So much. Yeah, and that's, some stories have to get a trim, and it's all about. And there are very skilled people who can cut and edit a story the sub-editors who can, take 100 words out of a story without actually losing any meaning or losing any info. There are ways they can do it, and very strong words people who are very good at that. So that is and very good headline writers too. Like some of the headlines that you see are outstanding, and they all add to the package of a paper and the experience for a reader. You want a reader to have a chuckle at a headline or whatever it is. So it's all
the things that catch the eye. And I don't even mean
exactly.
in the way that the internet will often dub things as like clickbait and stuff, but not necessarily in that sense too. Like it's just, clever headlines is like being able to write one it's a hell of a task sometimes.
Yeah, it is. It's got to make sense. It's got to fit. Like it's got to fit in the space as well. It's and there is a great satisfaction when you have a headline that works, fits, complements the story, and is right. But it can cause a lot of stress for editors and sub-editors on deadline when we can't make it fit. The clock's ticking, got to get the paper out.
Just give me something.
Yeah, that's it. And sometimes you go, "Oh, that's just going to have to do," and then you kick yourself about it. But then you go, "Well, the reader might like it. We don't know. We're thinking we need to do something else, but the reader might still like it." So, yeah, it's that's all just part of making the jigsaw of a newspaper work.
And that's, like some of those elements are a creative element there, and you're always going to have those moments after the fact where I could have done this better, I could have done that better, but there is the nature of the role, and there are timelines, and you hit those, and if you do have that moment afterwards of reflection, and you go, "Oh, geez, this would have been a lot better," well, that's something that can use to inform future work, future practice. So
totally. And there's a paper the next day. You just start, you start with a blank canvas and you go again. So that's the best thing about it is you have your good and bad days where you kick yourself over. Should have we done this and could have we done that? And you go, well, okay, we start again tomorrow. So away we go.
And learn from it.
And we that's right. It's in footy context, it's the next game. Away we go. But that is a good thing about it because you can sort of finish your day and you're done. A lot of things don't really hang around like some. It's very busy, very fast-paced job, but you start again, as opposed to some jobs. If you've got a big project and it might weigh on your mind for weeks. If you're in any sort of role where you've got 4 or 5 projects on the go that you've got to put time and effort in. I almost like the start again, as opposed to having this cloud over you for a long time. So that's yeah.
And so where do you see? I guess this now us doing a bit of forecasting as opposed to kind of the current day stuff. Like, where do you see things heading? Obviously, as we speak right now, we're talking on kind of a more of a community sort of focus. Geelong fans talking about their love of the game sort of thing. You've obviously got there's televised content, there's what we hear in radio, there's podcasts, there's all those sorts of things. Where do you see, I guess, with the nature of your current work, where do you see that kind of progressing from here? Like where does this traditional written form that's evolved to online, but where do you see that going?
Yeah, I think that written form has got a very long and bright future. I think that.
No, I'd agree.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, ask questions about it, which is fair enough, but those questions have been going around for a long time. Like the fact that we mentioned before that people still read the hard copy paper on their iPad in massive numbers, really big numbers. So the physical paper will be around for a long time. Yeah. It's complemented by the fact that you can read it on your computer, but also the hard copy. And people are still buying papers in big numbers, and news outlets have been smarter, or not smarter. They've sort of adapted with the times, and they've now got really viable online businesses where people buy a subscription like you would for a normal hard copy paper, and you can read that online. And I think that that's why it's in such a really strong position. I think there's still a very big presence, and I think you look at TV news, you look at radio. The amount of times that newspaper stories set the agenda for what is discussed on TV and the news that gets broken, and people still, if something breaks, you still go to your the Herald Sun website to read about it. So that's why so that's why I think that news outlets, the brand survives and will always really flourish.
No, I totally agree, and it's not just sport. Like, it is kind of the written word, the kind of the people that actually present the news in the first place. That, as you said, they set the agenda. And yes, there's discussions that stem from that, in regards to whether that's television, radio, podcast, internet, whatever. But the origin of it is kind of the written word, regardless of whether that's a physical paper, digital paper, or an online article. Like, it stems back to one key spot, and people breaking news in that space. So there's all these other pillars around that, and they complement it fantastically well. But there's a core to it that, yeah, I totally agree with you, and I think there's a place for kind of that written word for a very long time, and as you said, kind of setting the agenda, which is, I couldn't have said it any better myself.
Yeah, that's why we do it. We like, you love footy, and you write stories that you think people are going to be interested in, that are going to evoke some passion within the supporters, inform people, enlighten, challenge, like all those things. Like, I know that you hear that a lot with journalism, but I know that when you're sitting down and writing a story or reading it, or I'm reading a story that a reporter's written, you want to make sure that it is going in that direction, and because ultimately, as a consumer, you know what you want to read, so you want to make sure that what you're producing is what your readers want to read.
Yeah, would I be stimulated by this? Would I be engaged? Would I be challenged? And if you're saying yes to those, then you've probably put something together that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, spot on.
So as we start to wind things down a little bit, we'll kind of, I guess, refocus in, I guess, on the love of the Cats, and as opposed to kind of the work side of things. Is there anyone out there you deemed, who do you deem to be the greatest Cat that we've ever seen?
That we've ever seen? Well,
I guess maybe that you've ever seen. Maybe we can kind of narrow that down a little bit. Anyway.
I think I never saw Polly, but you put Polly up there. Gary Senior. I only caught the tail end of his career. Yep. Never saw his best live, as you probably
exactly the same.
Fortunate enough to see. I ran on the ground when he kicked his 1000th, so that's 96. I was about 7, but so that's a memory. That's good in terms of probably, let's say, post that, or so sort of say mid 90s. Gary Hocking is like, I think of Gary Hocking. I think of Matthew Scarlett, and I think I'll probably name a few here, but Matthew Scarlett is right up there. Corey Enright, and then you'd probably go Bartel Jr. and Selwood.
Yeah, and that's fair.
The order of those, you can
fluctuate on any given day.
Yeah, I think Scarlett's the best defender of the modern era. That's my biased opinion on that one. And there's Tom Stewart's, who knows in 5 years' time,
the way he's going.
Yeah, well, that's so they've had some great defenders, and Selwood, I just hope he just keeps playing. Like, I just love seeing players break records, and right now he's the leading games record holder. He's the longest serving captain of any club ever, and I just hope that he can just add to that and just keep building that record and put it out of reach for anyone, really, because it would be fitting in 50 or 100 years' time when people look at the record for the longest serving captain and see, Joel Selwood, however many games it'll be, and go, who was Joel Selwood? And they'll look up and remember what a gladiator he was of footy.
Yeah, I guess it was interesting that you said, I like to see records fall, and I'm a bit the same as you. I'm all for records falling, unless it's a Geelong person at the top, at which point they can stay there and no one else can get close. And I think you're right about Joel in that particular instance. I think he's the one, like that particular, and a lot of people have said this, obviously, in and around that period where he broke Stix's record. It's hard to see how it would happen. Like, we're talking about like a tuck length career just to get close. I mean, you don't see many people become a captain at that sort of age, and then to be able to have the longevity to be mostly, touch wood, obviously, as we get towards the end here, mostly injury free, or anything has been kind of on the smaller side, or enough that's allowed him to play anyway. I'm sure he's battled through a lot that has never been discussed.
Yeah, I'd love to know at the end of his career. Just write down. It'd be an amazing thing.
Fracture of arm here. This rib was broken.
Yeah.
And that was just round 1.
Yeah, I know. So if I'm putting my newspaper hat on, we would say, right, let's get a either a skeleton or just a photo of Joel Selwood. You run it full page and you say, can you annotate this? And you just have like, the elbow, a little line out to the elbow. So
I like your thinking.
Broken elbow, and put all these injuries just on this sort of, like a skeleton with lines going everywhere and just and what he had to endure.
Just as long as we don't put all the blood rule bits on there, because you're going to have too many little bubbles coming off his forehead or above his eye.
Yeah. Oh, that was, I mean, the gashes that you had, we ran something at the Addy a few years ago, the Joel Selwood headband as a bit of a marketing promotion, but with the blood stained. Yeah. So, I don't think he's had too many in recent times. Maybe he's getting his head out of the way.
No.
No, I think he's maybe his skin's repaired in his more mature age. But
yeah,
and even
moisturizer.
And just and Tom Hawkins as well. Like someone like him who's playing so well, you think it'd be great to see him get. He's not going to. I'd like to see him move up the leaderboard of goal kickers a bit more, and finish his career in 2 years' time, maybe having kicked, 800 goals. I'm not quite sure where he is at the moment, but that would be.
Well, he's only, as of when we record, because he kicked 3 on the weekend, so I think he's 696, 697.
Yeah, yep.
So I'm with you. I feel like 800 is, as long as the body holds up, and I mean, we can still argue that he's possibly playing the best footy he's ever played right now. Yeah. 2 years seems viable. And he'd be actually kicking, fewer goals per match than he has been in the last few years in order to chase down 800 at that point. So it feels like that's an attainable one. And then who knows how we go from there. I guess his body, he's not going to get much smaller, so he might be able to keep throwing around full backs for a few more years even on top of that, for all we know.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Oh, it'd be great. Park him in the goal square, and Jeremy Cameron leads up, and
we'll go a bit old school. Just dump it in there.
Yeah, that's
Don't run, Tom.
No.
Drop it on your head.
Exactly right. No, it'd be good. And I mean, the debate about Geelong's old players just keeps going on, but they just find a way. I think they are injecting enough kids in to sort of help that transition. Like that, the Geelong team that played Adelaide, you look at, they had another debutant. You've got Cooper Stevens who's playing. Nevitt has played, but he's not playing at the moment.
Shannon
Neil, Jack in a box. I mean, that was
if only he clunked one or two of those, that would have been great.
Yeah,
time capsule people. We've just done this after he's played his debut game.
Yes. So, and then you've got Max Holmes will come back soon, and Jack Henry's still very young. So that there are some really key young players, and they're still winning games this year without, say, much impact from a Dangerfield and all that. So there's
reason to be excited.
Yeah, I think so. You'd much rather be in this position than the teams at the bottom end who just can't get it, seem to struggle and just can't make it work.
Yeah, it's a challenging spot. I think when you find yourself at the bottom there, it would be very difficult to get out, and it's a luxury as Geelong supporters that we've not really seen that for 2 decades, really, for the most part.
Yeah, totally. No, it's exciting times because the comp's really even. You see that. You look at Gold Coast to a 12th or 13th, so a margin off and you are in trouble. But if you get your game going, Melbourne's beatable. We see Melbourne is beatable. Fremantle is beatable too. They've had a lean patch, and the Cats knocked off Brisbane earlier in the year. So on your given day, if you get it right, you can go all the way.
Well, it goes back to kind of what we were talking about with some of those finals, but even back in the 90s where, flip of a coin and things could have been very different. That's still happening now. That's the nature of the game. That you only need to be a few % off and the other team on, and that's it. It's over.
Yeah, totally. No, it's why there's good reason for optimism, I reckon.
Yeah. Now, I feel like I maybe know the answer to this one, given just even how you kind of recited some of the players before, but I'll ask it anyway. Junior or senior?
Well,
tablets, of course.
Yeah. I'm going to say...
Schoolyard pick style, I guess.
Yeah, kind of more schoolyard. I'm going to say senior on that because he could do things that no one could do. Junior's career for longevity, probably gets him, but I'm just going to say, if you're picking a player, line them up, just go senior.
Yeah. No, I'd agree with you. And I don't want to sound derogatory to Junior, but there's lots of amazing midfielders, not all of which are of his caliber, I might add, but you don't have as great a pool of incredible full forwards, and Gary Ablett Senior is absolutely, if not the top of the pile, then certainly, 1, 2, 3. Obviously, that conversation rages often between him, Carey, Lockett, and Dunstall, for example.
Yeah,
but
it does. Yeah, I remember.
The pool's not as
sorry. Yeah, but Billy Brown's, I think Billy Brown's was asked this question. I think he summed it up the best when he goes, you got Gary Senior playing on one oval and Gary Junior playing on another. Which oval are you going to watch? And you go to Senior because he'll do things that are so extraordinary. Gary, you admire his just talent and he's how good he is, but like Senior can go higher. So
there's magic there.
Yeah. So, but gee, you'd take them both if you could, wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Who's your current favorite player? I think it's probably Joel, but is it?
Yeah, current favorite.
I should say.
Yeah, it's a good question. Look, Selwood, I just admire everything about him. Like how long, he's a gentleman too. Like he's a great leader of the club. I think that Tom Stewart is really
making a charge.
Yeah. But I'm a big Sam de Koning fan. He's come from nowhere. I think I'm really bullish on him as a footballer. I think he'd be an absolute star. Like Jack Henry's injury, while unfortunate, has absolutely created an opportunity for him to show how good he is. To the point where
Chris Stanley taking kind of blitzers out of the back line has kind of opened up further opportunity there.
100%. Yep. So like often they say injuries create opportunity, and you go, well, they're never as good as who they're replacing. But de Koning, like that's it. Lock him in. Like
might be an exception to the rule at this point.
Yeah, I think so. But someone so young, so yeah. But I've always had a leaning towards defenders. Like I was Scarlett and Enright. I really admired those guys. So the defenders are the stars.
Well, my next question's usually like who's that kind of future player that you got your eye on? But I guess it's probably SDK, right?
Yeah, totally. Right now, he's the one. Like I said, just good to see him got recognised as a rising star.
Long overdue.
Yeah, long overdue. Yeah, so I think he's the one. But yeah, I really like how they're giving kids a go this year, and they play them when they're ready. They don't just throw them in. Like I can't really think of too many kids who get thrown in and you go, well, he's straight out next week. Like most survive and stay for a bit, and they get in because they've earned it. So that's good.
No, I'd agree. Yeah, I can't really think of anyone that's kind of fit that bill. And even then, they might have just had one bad game. Like they were ready, but things just didn't work out. Or maybe there was an absence of a player for 1 week. They got the opportunity, they got shuffled out. Not because they did anything wrong. They just, unfortunately, there's a pecking order. I mean, this Geelong has, for a long time, been a serious premiership contender. And there's things you forfeit, I guess, in order to hold that status.
Yeah, that's it. And for so long through that era, there weren't too many openings. Now there are, and you mentioned de Koning, like so he goes in, fills a spot, but now he's not losing. He's not losing that spot. He's staying in the team where it doesn't matter if Jack Henry, Blitzarv, Stanley, Segler, doesn't matter if all these blokes are in, they're not pushing him out of the team. Yeah. So, and that's how all good players take their spot. Like they make themselves undroppable. Like Jack Henry was a similar one. It always felt like Jack Henry a couple of years ago was just hanging on, just sort of filling a spot. And then that final series in 2020, and you're like, well, this bloke's never getting dropped again. Yeah. And it just clicks for them sometimes. So, I think Sam's going to be a star.
Yeah, I mean, you highlighted well with the Jack Henry one there. Yeah, that finals was so successful for him, and then the next thing you know, he's part of that chain of running up the field there with oh damn, I've just gone blank on his name. We've kicked him out to Freo and the name's just disappeared.
Oh, Jordan Clark.
Yeah, Jordan Clark. He's part of that chain with Jordan Clark against Hawthorn, putting on an incredible treat there to kick that goal. Like
that's right, at Easter Monday last year.
Yeah, and I mean, I was thrilled I finally got to that one. That's with all the post-COVID stuff behind us to be part of that. Shame about the result, but anyway. Like you saw it right there. Like he had this giant moment, and the confidence that injects into a young player. They suddenly do that stuff like that months later. It's awesome to see.
Yeah, it is.
How do you see things shaping up for the Cats as the year plays out now?
Yeah, I think.
Where do we see us landing? Yeah, can we still win it? That sort of thing.
Yeah, I think it's a tough one. Like I think they can certainly still win it. They've been a bit up and down clearly, and but I think what has helped is the whole comp's up and down. So 2 weeks ago, when they lose to St Kilda, and you go, well, there's no way they're going to finish top 4 now. Like, they've lost to St Kilda, they've lost to a team outside them. There's too many teams around the mark. They can't. They're not playing well enough. And then so you win back-to-back games at home, which always helps. But Sydney drop games, Fremantle drop games around. Yeah, everyone's dropping games, and you go, Carlton's dropping games, and they're still, with a win that they're in the top 4 again, and suddenly it's game on. So I think that if they can squeeze into top 4, that would be a really, really good achievement from where they are. I probably think in my heart of hearts that they're in the bottom half of the 8 at the moment.
Yeah.
But I mean,
you never know.
No, we played North Melbourne twice, played West Coast twice, so you might ride your luck a bit there. We play Melbourne in round 16 or 17.
Really late in the piece.
So that'll be a pretty good test. But so will it's a really even comp. But they can certainly win it because they can get on a run, and they've just got to make sure they win the games against the teams around them, because, like I said, like that St Kilda game when they were up by 4 goals and lost that, it's like, well, that's an 8-point game you've just thrown away. And maybe that Hawthorn game on Easter Monday when those sorts of things you rue. But they're good enough, definitely good enough to win it, because their losses have been tight. Like, they're not getting blown away by teams. They're tight losses, which always shows that you're in control for a long period, I reckon. But it's just so, like, Fremantle's not going to drop too many at home. Brisbane won't drop too many at home. Melbourne won't drop many at all. And
if any more.
Yeah. So who's filling fourth? Can Carlton hang on? Does St Kilda get in? Does Sydney get in? Like, that's what I'm saying. It's a fine line between 4th and 8th, and
the doggies are obviously on a surge.
The doggies, I mean the doggies as well. So that's
there's lots of contenders, I guess, for that place. So
it is.
It'll certainly be interesting if you can sit there and be a neutral for the whole thing, but with a little bit of bias injected into this conversation. Let's hope the Cats can find their way into that spot.
No, that's it. In between Cats friends, let's go the Cats. But sure.
There's reasons to. I mean, for all the reasons you've cited, and I mean, obviously thankfully, and touch wood, things can change. It's a very fickle game, and players' bodies are fickle, but. I mean, we see Danger getting a bit of a rest at the moment to get that body right. We've got Sam Menegola that's on the way back. We've got Gary Rowan that's meant to be back in this week. Again, time capsule as of when we record. There's a list of players that are queuing up or starting to queue up or have a time. We mentioned Jack Henry before. He's meant to be sometime after the bye. All those sorts of things that you think, we're getting along okay. Yes, we've had some tight losses. There's been some games that we've lost that we shouldn't have. But we're doing it without X, Y, Z. Maybe.
Yeah, that's right. There's so many players who aren't playing, and when you actually list them, the injury list is really long, and depth players too. Like, there's no real fit ruckman at the club because you go like
Segler and Stanley and
even the young fella Conway, I think, is injured as well. The draftee.
He actually just came back through the VFL in the last week. Yeah, he's getting I think maybe just played his second game now, or was it his first?
Okay,
first or second?
Yeah, so they've been really stretched, haven't they, in that department, and
even Asava,
and Asava as well. I think Menegola's been the forgotten man really throughout this year. Like, he's barely been able to. Well, I don't think he might have played one game, but he can't get over his injuries. So, just where does he get back in? Probably, but it's going to be tough because he's going to have to play a bit of VFL. And like Jack Henry will be great when he gets back, but. Like, Dangerfield's not playing, and like there's
the pressure for spots is going to be real soon.
Yeah, it will be, and
I guess it is now again. But I guess we spoke about the kids before and what they're doing. Like, the pressure's already there.
Yeah, it is.
Which is great.
That's what you want. You want them all fit. You don't want. See, last year it got derailed when there was a few injuries, and then when Tom Stewart, like, you look at how important he is. Like, he gets injured last year, and it essentially changes the course of the Cats season in that moment. Maybe we will never realise just how much, but when you look at the impact that he has had this year, you go, well, he probably would have been the difference in a couple of those games. And again,
he probably doesn't arrest the prelim, but maybe he helps with the earlier finals, and so we don't find ourselves in that situation.
That's it. Maybe stops the Melbourne game when they're 7 goals up. Doesn't just does enough to make sure they hold on and Geelong
the
finished
Inset
on
King there.
top.
I'm sure he picked one or two off, right?
Yeah, that's right.
His what if?
Maybe picked that last one, gotten Max Gawn's way, perhaps.
Yeah, climbed all over him, put the knee in there, and spoiled that thing. Oh,
that's right.
That's life. Well, fingers crossed for the Cats, obviously, for their upcoming game against the Dogs and beyond. But thanks so much, Nick, for coming on the show and sharing this journey so far. And I'm, I guess, watching from afar, going to be excited to see what comes of your work, what you're involved with, and all the cool opportunities for the competition abroad, for sport abroad, and also a little bit of, let's hope you get to go to a grand final as a fan, a bit more of a fan, less of a working capacity, and get to really bask in it sometime really soon, hopefully this year.
Let's hope so. That'd be great. Thanks for having me on, and love what you're doing with the podcast show. It's great. It's
Thank you.
We love hearing stories about Cats fans. I love chatting to Cats fans. So it'll be great. I know you've got some good guests lined up. So
yeah, Bundy the other week, which was great, and
great.
And we'll continue to build that out. So hopefully more to come.
Very good.
If people want to catch up with you, get in touch, and I mean, I think they all know where to go with the Herald Sun, but you personally, where would people be best to go?
Oh, you can probably best to drop me a DM on Twitter. It's just @Nick_Wade. Just hit me up on there, or you search me on Twitter. You can find me there, and I'll do my best to get back to you as soon as I can.
No, absolutely do that. I mean, we've been in touch pre-show. Like Nick's great in terms of the communication there, so please make sure to do so. Cats fans, as always, subscribe to the Hoop Show on YouTube. Subscribe to the podcast version, the feed of Behind the Play. That's on all good podcasts, and probably the bad ones too. Podcast services everywhere. Go check it out there. Positive reviews, we'd love them. It helps get the show out there, more exposure to more people. But again, Nick, thanks so much for coming on the show, mate.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.
And Cats fans, remain Geelong strong. We'll see you next time.